The former acting director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, is speaking out about his experiences at the Justice Department and his interactions with President Trump. In his new book, The Threat: How the FBI Protects America in the Age of Terror and Trump, McCabe explains why he opened the counterintelligence investigation into the president. Now, President Trump and others are trying to discredit McCabe's claims he was fired from the FBI for lacking candor when speaking to investigators. We spoke to McCabe earlier, and he responded to the Justice Department's Inspector General report.
I say to those people and to folks who just don't know what to believe, I was subjected to an extraordinarily unprecedented process through that investigation. I deeply disagree with the conclusions in that investigation. That is something that I will take up with the Department of Justice in upcoming civil litigation. So I'm limited to some extent how detailed I can address the allegations here with you today. I can say, without any reservation, I never intentionally misled anyone in the Inspector General's office, in the FBI, and certainly not ever a director of the FBI.
Why would they say that? Why would they say that in the report?
It's a great question, Vlad, and it's one that I've considered for many, many months. I have a lot of questions about that report. Why notable pieces of information that directly contradict their conclusions weren't even referenced in the report. This report, and I am someone who has read and written investigative reports for 21 years, does not read like any investigative report I have ever seen. It is not an objective recitation of all the facts. It is a highly prejudicial an argument advocating for a particular result, a result that the President of the United States himself demanded publicly. So I would say to folks who have heard about the report and are concerned about those things to hold their judgment and wait until all the facts come out.
Let me ask you about some news of the day. The New York Times is reporting that Jared Kushner received the highest level of security clearance, essentially at the request of the president.
That's right.
That the chief of staff, Kelly, at the time sent out a memo saying, we got to do this. Should we be concerned? You know, I don't know how these sort of security clearances work, but certainly we had heard reporting that there were several people in the White House who weren't quite getting their security clearance well into the administration doing their work. And hey, Jared Kushner, has pretty vast portfolio, including bringing peace to the Middle East. How concerned should we be?
Very. The security clearance process is extensive, it's careful, it's conducted across multiple agencies. There are folks who spend their entire lives marshaling that process for people who need security clearances. Anytime you have a new administration, you have a lot of folks who don't maybe have prior clearances. There's a rush to get that work done. Sometimes it can lag. Sometimes people are on interim clearances until the process can be complete. That part is normal. What is not normal is an administration, and indeed in this case, if the article is accurate, the president himself countermanding the direct recommendation of the professionals who conduct that process. I have never seen that in my career. I've had a lot of exposure to the process. The FBI does a lot of that work through their background checks. The president certainly has the power to do that, but exercising that power in this way, especially for a relative, raises all sorts of very concerning questions.
Another really sort of astounding moment during Michael Cohen's testimony, he said that he is concerned that if President Trump loses the 2020 election, he will not concede the White House. And my first thought was, what did he hear? What has he been exposed to that makes him think that? And given the upending of norms that this Trump presidency has brought to the nation, and some people welcome that. Some people like the fact that he's a disruptor. But the idea that a president of the United States would not concede because of the language that he used during the 2016 election, that the elections are rigged, as he thought that he might be losing, he called the elections rigged. How concerned are you about that, and how concerned should we as a nation be about that?
It's a really tough question, Vlad. I can only assume that Mr. Cohen is speaking based on his substantial knowledge of the president and his kind of approach to things. It's really hard for me to imagine a factual scenario in which any very disappointed president who has lost an election would not concede and essentially not turn over the hands of government to the incoming president. So it's hard for me to imagine that happening. although we confront issues every day that we didn't see coming. So.
Listen, before we let you go,
Yep.
you know, you've been questioned about the book for a while, and you know, there's a lot of focus on your interactions with Donald Trump, but it's really sort of also about your journey to the FBI, what drew you to the FBI,
right.
how grueling it is to become a part of the FBI. And one of the things that I was struck by as I was going through this is I really got the sense that the rules, the behaviors, the history, the tradition, all this sort of stuff that drew you to this institution, it felt almost like the environment changed around you in a matter of months. Like the ground shifted, that you expected certain rules of behavior, and then this new administration upended all of that. And you know, as Vlad pointed out, that's what a lot of people wanted. They wanted
Sure.
a disruptor. But I wondered if what it was like for you, did it feel like suddenly an awful lot had changed in a matter of 8 or 9 months?
Well, it did.
Yeah.
It was disorienting. You know, it was, you know, as I said, we approach every new administration understanding that the process of getting that new administration up to speed is going to be, there's a learning curve there. We're one of the only agencies that bridges administration after administration. We have almost no political, we have one political position in the FBI, the director, and he stays for quite a long term. So we went into that process in January of 2017 thinking, okay, this is a group that doesn't have a lot of experience in what we do. We'll need to be particularly careful on how we, you know, show them how this works and kind of get them to where they need to be. But it was moments like the request to drop the Flynn investigation that shattered that illusion. It was that in that moment for me when I realized that this is not a lack of sophistication. This is not just disrupting the old ways and bringing new policies and processes to government, which is, of course, a good thing. This is, in effect, to fundamentally alter the way that we do our business, the business of justice, the business of fairness, the business of equal play for everyone. And that is something that to us shakes the very foundation of the organization that we're in and the things that we've all committed our lives to do.
Well, and just to finish up on that point that both you and Anne-Marie are making, it's interesting, those of us who've been fascinated by the history of the FBI, sort of understand sort of the yin and yang of the institution, right? This
Sure.
is an organization that tried to root out white supremacists during the civil rights era, but also recorded Martin Luther King Jr., right?
That's right.
And yet there's this push and pull between the good things that the FBI has done and some of the things that specifically under J. Edgar Hoover that were not so good.
That's right.
But with what is happening today, do you think that the FBI can weather? Is this the most, I guess, challenging period the Bureau has ever faced?
Because we have that incredibly checkered past as a domestic intelligence organization, particularly. It's hard for me to say if this is worse than, you know, the period where we were conducting unlawful break-ins of perceived political rivals of administration. So that's a hard one for me to call. What I can tell you is that this is a slightly different era, because I think the things that the FBI is struggling with today are not self-inflicted wounds like the errors of the past. They are responding to literally a daily assault on their competence, on their independence, and on their professionalism. And that is incredibly corrosive. Despite those assaults, the men and women of the FBI will continue to do the right thing every day. But their job gets a little bit harder, a little bit harder, a little bit harder. Will they prevail? I have no doubt they will. How damaged will they become in that process? I think that's a question for us all.
All right, Andrew McCabe, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.